My name is Marek Przor. I'm team leader for cluster policy in DG GROW in the European Commission, having the pleasure to lead the cluster policy in the European Union, and having the pleasure to be here with all my panelists. And this is very challenging because we are already tired after the whole day, but this will be something which I hope will be stimulating, and maybe we will quarrel, maybe we will have arguments or not. I'm just trying to invite you to listen to something which is the core of cluster policy. And basically, when we are talking about cluster policy, usually people are thinking on cluster organizations, but this is not what we mean. We have clusters. Christina tried to define these clusters today as groupings in location. We have cluster organizations, which is the entity which can help, but we have cluster policy. And how we define cluster policy is the political commitment, basically by the government, to support clusters, to the ones who exist or the ones who want to start existing, and the measures behind it. So this is what we want to discuss as well from the point of view of the realization and implementation of policy objectives, be it at regional, national, or EU level. From EU level, it is very clear: green transition, digital transition, resilience. So how cluster can be useful, can be a tool to help, particularly here in Lithuania, in realization, implementation of policy objectives at national, regional, and EU level. So I have a pleasure here to have the panelists who represent actually the ecosystem, the system, where you have the businessmen. I will start with you. We have the cluster managers, we have the agency, and the most important, from the policy point of view, ministry. Ministry. But from the most important, from the implementation point of view, businessmen. And the ones in between, the cluster managers, who are businessmen as well. But what I want to show here, this whole group of people are in order to make the country functioning better, make them richer, more wealthy. So you have all the same goals in order to increase GDP per capita, to have more environmentally friendly society, environment, more digital. So you are on the same boat. And many of you across Europe, we have as well. We are on the same boat. So we are all ecosystem. So we need to work in win-win. That's why for many, many years in the European Commission, we promoted smart specialization strategies as very much bottom-up, top-down collaboration, interactive process of designing policy and then implementing policy. And clusters are inside. Clusters are exactly in order to help. And as you know, at this moment, DG Regio is negotiating operational programs. One of the enabling conditions is well-functioning entrepreneurial discovery process. And it's hard to believe that entrepreneurial discovery process can work and function if clusters are not involved in this process of designing and implementing. So this is what we think from the policy point of view, but then it comes to reality, and here we have the people who are practitioners in their fields. So let me first give the micro. We planned that you do a short presentation, but actually you already presented in the morning. So we know that you mentioned this three roles for clusters. No? The leading interdisciplinary and cross-sectoral actions, activities, then leading research and development, and then leading role in green and digital transition. This is what I read from your slides. But let's have shortly, let me give you the floor, that you shortly can present, and I will ask, if you allow me, first cluster managers and businessmen to shortly present what they are doing, what you are doing, and how you see the cluster policy and how policy instruments can be helpful by public administration for what you are doing. Out of your head, what is your feeling that public policy should be helping you in order to realize these policy objectives? So, if you allow me, I will start with you, and I must admit, we have you can introduce yourself so that you know, we have the representative of the wood, and wood is one of the biggest issues where we have disruptions in the EU. So all the more so we had, we have morning sessions on disruptions, and I remember when we met, you mentioned the increasing price of wood, the lack of wood. So how are you dealing with this, and actually what you think the public policy could be for you?
Thank you. Thank you, Marek. My name is Arūnas, Lithuanian prefabricated wooden house cluster manager. At first, I'd like to say that we must collaborate with policymakers. Sometimes they make decision blindly. They didn't ask what our companies need, what our companies live in, where are they, and what are they doing now this day, because it's very dynamic every day, especially now at this time when the war started. And we have very good example the last year when we started to think about green course in Europe, and we got some exercises from Ministry of Environment, and we should give them some digits and some numbers. How do we live now, and how many square meters we do, and what can we do when the green course will become a true here in Lithuania and will become. We helped them, and we saw that a big problem is in the regulations. In building regulations and the fire department requirements. And here we saw that we can nothing do like a cluster, like a business company with a fire department and some other departments which regulate these policies. So the ministry, they started talk. They started collaborate with us, with our cluster. We took other architects and become a new project with new policies that could be at these days to see a daylight. So, and thanks to ministry that they started it. So this is collaboration between policymakers and the cluster. This was collaboration. This is okay. It's not finished, but we have some problem here, and we need more help from our ministry, environment, to talk with another countries, the same ministries, for regulations there, to see why the fire is different in other countries and is different in Lithuania and is making a different damage to the house. So now I speak in a people language, that's directly. So this help we need today. That's okay, we'll get it. So I say collaboration, but at first collaboration must be between cluster and the government, and then cluster to cluster, and then cluster company to another cluster company. So that's my...
Thank you, super actually. Thank you for giving concrete examples. And Diana?
I'm Diana.
Diana. So
I am Diana.
yeah,
Yeah.
sorry. Yeah, health technology. No?
Yes.
I'm sorry. So for health, if you can refer to this ecosystem, because for COVID-19 we had lots of issues, and it was showing that how can we be resilient when we started to do matchmaking. You remember March last year. We as a European Commission particularly were very criticized that we are not providing supply of vaccines. And then we had a session, a morning session with Cluster Alliance, where we came up, okay, so let's organize the matchmaking. And we have organized within 2 months the matchmaking when we brought together the whole ecosystem in Europe of people who are producing vaccines. And then right now we have overcapacity of vaccines, which was, now everything is fine, but it's only 1 year, and we were able to react very quickly to be the biggest producer of COVID-19 vaccines, which didn't exist. Very much thanks to the cluster and networking collaboration and using and here I want to stress, we were able to organize it because we liaised with specialists who knew how the vaccine is produced. Because I had no clue about vaccines. Antonio didn't have clue about vaccines, but we had the people who worked in the companies which produce vaccines, and they were helping us to find the right partners in order to boost the production. So how you see this ecosystem in if you can have in Lithuania? You have the sorry.
So your question.
My question is how you organize the ecosystem of health actors, health ecosystem here through clusters. You network the groups of health industry ecosystem actors.
Yeah, our cluster is more related with health technologies. We are creating products for public health, and we are more related with preventive technologies. Our members are not creating vaccines, but our role in sector are also very important because our members are also working in biotechnologies, and they also creating really useful new diagnosis technologies and new products. So I think it's really important when we are building ecosystem of health. We really need more attention from cluster policymakers, and we want to bring together policymakers and our stakeholders that they start discussion with us. We want more involvement in working groups and to be heard, because today we have had a lot of talks that clusters are really good tool. So we really want that we was used in building ecosystems, in achieving all political objectives and goals.
If we talk about wood, you mentioned regulation, so it was helpful to have this dialogue with policymakers. In your case, would it be support in common research and development projects in order to boost your technology in medicines, something like this? What would you advise, ask as a policymakers for the health ecosystem to be the most useful for you? What kind of support would you expect?
Of course, we need financial support. We need more attention how to attract SMEs to cluster initiatives, and also more investments to implement health and biotechnologies technologies. So I think as other health clusters, we need mainly financial support.
Yeah, but there's a range probably of needs that you have, and in order to really get out in what is the need, you would need to have get into dialogue on details with the policymakers, which would help you. August, you wanted to?
Yes, 1, 2, 3, yes,
Yeah.
hearable. So just let me use the moment to greet everyone from the international guests. Welcome to Vilnius, it's a pleasure to host you here. And I was listening almost entire day of all the talks, and since it's the last roundup and a discussion, and then later on it's going to be the dinner, so let me a little bit spice up the environment here and the atmosphere, so you would have some topics to discuss when you're going to have a dinner. And 75% I disagree with everything what I heard today, and the reason is I don't believe that the clusters needs the support now. And I think that talking about the Lithuania and the Baltics, with all due respect to all the correspondents here who were talking, the policy, the long-term policy for the clusters, it's unclear because the cluster strategy is unclear. It's mirroring each other. And well, just to explain to international guests my background, so in 2011 I founded one of the first clusters in Lithuania, which was called Smart IT Cluster, and it evolved to the Agri-Food Lithuania, which now runs as the cluster and was one of the most known digital innovation hubs in Europe. And then I passed the wheel drive to one of the best CEOs and one of the most beautiful CEOs, Kristina, who Mantas, I think, called godmother of the clusters in Lithuania, right? So I was like in setting up all that space there, but mainly now I talk as the businessman and the investor in the agri-food tech mostly. And the funny thing is today is I was hearing from different cluster representatives when they were saying the missions of the organizations, like converting the ideas to the greener technologies, sustainable businesses and stuff. For example, Agri-Food Lithuania has the mission to use the digital tech to transform people's life to better and safer part of the living life. And so these are the missions and visions, but when most of the people were talking, they were talking, and it's not written in the mission, because what I heard is that they just want to have more funding from the Commission and from national support. So what is the exactly mission? Because jumping from one financing program to another, once again, sorry, it's my personal opinion, it's not the mission and vision of the organization. I mean, me and my business once, because I also involved in the ag tech and food tech, if we invest 10 mils to new lab, in average, within the past decade, I'm getting about 4 mils as a subsidy. But if I wouldn't get the money as the donation, I would still build the lab. I would still do that. And so then again, I mean, who you want to talk with as the commission? You want to talk with a cluster coordinating organization, which model is to sustain salaries for upcoming 3 years, or you want to, as Christina was mentioning, interesting term, I was not using that before, or you want to have the voice of a systematic ecosystem where the champions are living, the leaders of the business, the corporates, the SMEs. And if you want to hear the voice of them, you need to make the KPIs within the policy for the cluster so they would find out and come up with the business models. Because our example, the cluster, the DIH, 45 people running self-commercially sustainable way, selling the services, participating, supporting the startups. But when I'm saying supporting the startups, taking the royalty, taking the IP, taking the equity. So once the startups evolve, the DIH and the cluster itself, it gets revenue. it's organization which is strong. And when it's strong, you know, it's more easier to listen to it. So I would say that the clusters should focus on the way how to live without the EU funding. And then there will be more of the funding. And then again, to conclude, because I'm talking almost 10 minutes, it's really simple example talking about agriculture. Once the Commission defines that there are new goals, let's say the Green Deal now, and since the farmers are getting a lot of subsidies, direct subsidies, Commission, it's like a whip and carrot model. So Commission says that within 10 years, 8 years remained, you need to use, let's say, half of the fertilizers and the chemicals in order to still continuing to receive the direct funding from the Commission. And then it's a matter of farmer on the tools and the models or the actions, how he is going to contribute to achieve the goal in order to get the subsidies. So I mean, my idea is that if we are going to support clusters, let's support then it's more heavier, but attaching to the KPIs. For example, the previous national call was 2 years ago, so colleagues know, to fund the national class DAH. I mean, it was about the Digital Innovation Hub, and we united 2 Digital Innovation Hub to get 5 mils for the infrastructure and prototyping, which is kind of okay, but for the 5 million to get the money here in Lithuania, we as Agri-Food and our colleagues, we committed after the end of the project within all the DIH members to generate additional 134 million of euros of turnover by selling additional digital services within the 5 years. If you don't do the KPI, you wire money back. So I mean, then again, the question is what we want to achieve. Then we need to calculate the money and the programs, how we're going to facilitate the clusters, but we need to ask them exact KPIs, not just to mingle a network, which is amazing, and without that we wouldn't be here. But I think we should look a little bit broader and upper. So that would be my remark.
Thank you very much. This was a very healthy voice of the businessman. And we will come back to this because we had discussions about the funding here. We have as well our view from the European Commission how it should be. But before, let me finish the round with cluster managers. So, film. This is the creativity. And you remember when the lockdown came, one of the biggest losers were people working in the creative business. What did you do?
Hi everyone, I'm Darius. I'm a cluster manager in the Baltic Film and Creative Tech cluster. I'm not sure if I heard you correctly, but I'm not sure we were losers in the last 2 years. I think at least in Lithuania the industry kept booming, to be honest, and we adapted quite quickly to the challenges. And in terms of revenue, like even in 2020, I think we lost a bit compared to the last year, but in 2021 we gained more turnover per all the companies in the industry than in 2019. So,
but you said you needed to adapt.
Oh, definitely. But that's the point for all the industries. If you get stuck into some point that is difficult to get out, you're gonna get in trouble. So yeah, in terms of us being a cluster and how we supported the companies down at that time, we were the one voice that kept asking for relaxing regulations in terms of travel, because that's really important for the film industry. And I think we were one of the first countries to kind of get special permissions for technicians and directors and producers coming down to Lithuania, so it was really helpful. But it showed the resolve and the commitment of the companies together with the cluster and other community members to work on that. But I think what helped us and how we differ from other clusters is actually when we saw the number of 1% of SMEs being in cluster communities. I think for us it's close to around 50%. We have most of the bigger companies involved, and it gives us a better voice both nationally and both internationally, because our main aim is to promote Lithuania, not to promote the cluster itself, but to promote the industry Lithuania. And then we know that the projects will come in, and yeah, our industry is a bit different. You know, it can't grow that fast because it's really labor intensive. So we have various challenges. For example, for us, the main challenge is not the possible contracts, or because we have a quite good track record, but actually it's talent. So yeah, we're working on our own talent programs, talent attraction programs, upskilling, reskilling programs, because with the universities it's complicated because they're a bit slow in what we need and they don't offer what we exactly need at this moment. And I think, yeah, these kind of programs there actually can help us being more sustainable because they can be monetized. And I agree with my colleague that, yeah, clusters should not just ask for money, they should, just say to the policymakers, okay, we bring you this, we bring you that, we can solve you this. And yeah, and I agree, and then the money will come. And so I think we should be showing more, contributing more, and then the other part will come naturally to us.
Thanks a lot for this voice. So, automotive, if we can move, apparently there was a moment when there was a big crisis, in the sense of size, there was a big supply and the prices were going down. It seems it's changed. How you as automotive cluster react at this moment? If you can get mic. You have.
Hello, my name is Andrus. I'm representing automotive aftermarket cluster. And actually, I can say that we had 3 phases of crisis: COVID, China, and nowadays situation with Russia. So actually, it's not maybe a crisis, maybe it's a challenge, as all the sectors are facing the same. So one of the issues is the increase in energetic prices. The second one is transport, shipments from abroad, if we need raw material or components. And the third one is how our clients and suppliers look at us as reliable partners. Because during these days, quite a lot of companies, foreign companies, sees us in a high risk because of Russian aggression. So, for example, companies right now have to make prepayments instead of 30 or 60 days payments for the raw material. So it's quite challenging because companies need to have additional budgets to make their turnovers. And right now, this challenge with Ukraine, Belarus, and Russia makes companies to seek for other markets and other suppliers. And of course, it takes time. And let's say, looking from our topic, what could be the policy from governmental side, from governmental agencies? So I think right now we need common activities with our government to make the right directions, to provide additional ideas where we can go together. Because anyway, our cluster members are the system. As Christina had mentioned, that a cluster is a system. So actually, a cluster is a system with government, with educational institutions, and other players in economic. So this moment, what we need a common vision with our government, our ministries. So I hope that after our meeting, it's going to be, we're going to have more discussions and we're going to find additional solutions for such kind of challenges.
Thank you. If you can see, we had the representative of the wood industrial ecosystem, we had the representative of the creative ecosystem, of health ecosystem, of automotive ecosystem. Each of them, they have specific issues and specific topics. You cannot solve it like reading reading newspapers or reading research. You must talk to these people because they, at the moment, know what is happening. That's why, as well, in the Commission, we have shortened the reach out to clusters, to business in our through webinars, through discussions, through surveys, so that we have the direct contact. And before I give the voice to the ministry, I want to come to the agency as an example. You have been introducing a certain measure, concrete measure, which is the public policy support, basically. So would you share experience how you did it?
Hello, everybody. I'm Yolita. I'm representative from Agency for Science, Innovation and Technology. And from 2016, we have a project which helps for clusters. And this project is like an accelerator program, actually, because each cluster have their needs, and they are coming with their fears, with their problems, and we need to think about how to solve them. And of course, we are like a chain from cluster to ministry. And I think the first step is to talk. On 2020, we had the third, I think, cluster document, which we signed, but COVID came and we didn't implement anything from this document. So I hope from this event, we will try to figure it out somehow and started to communicate clusters and all our community. And about the project, our project in the link is started, as I said, already from 2016, and it will be to next year. And I hope it will be longer and helpful for clusters. I don't know, did I answer the question?
Thank you. I will now address to Richardas, if I pronounce okay. Yeah. Because your role is extremely difficult in every country, particularly where you are responsible for innovation industry. You need to hear voices of everyone and then react properly. Then you have all this politics behind. So you have business, politics, and you need to balance all this and find the right measures in order to satisfy the needs of everyone. So it's really difficult, and as I'm almost 20 years in the Commission, I always had very big appreciation for the directors of innovation and industry in every country, because they are like on the really spotlight. So what is your view? I think I'm coming here with colleagues that we think that clusters can help you in realizing the needs that you have as a director of innovation and industry. How do you see the situation and the role of development of cluster policy in Lithuania?
Yeah, so good afternoon, if I can say like that, for everyone again. So yeah, my position is quite hard at this moment. I mean, because, you know, to represent the government, you know, in one person or in one unit or even in one ministry, it's of course, it's not possible, because even when we started with the first panelists, you know, when we talk about the government, so there are a lot of different areas, a lot of different spheres. So like there are like ministries, energy, agriculture, and so on. So, you know, there are some specific issues related to some clusters that clusters and their members deal with, you know, some challenges. So, you know, it's many times it's many different institutions that could help, you know, in solving those challenges. So, but of course, I represent the Ministry of Economy and Innovation, and the cluster policy, innovation and industry development policies is what we are doing on the daily basis. And you also got it right that it's really quite a challenge, you know, to manage all of the needs, you know, expectations, and what we have actually, what available resources are in our hands. So it's really, you know, the question of priorities and which priorities are the biggest ones, which are in the biggest need for a particular moment, and so on. For example, of course, now we are facing, as it quite clearly mentioned, 3 different crises subsequently, which were following each other or even are at the same time existing, you know. So it's a quite complex thing, you know, to solve all of the, or at least to try to help in many ways, you know, for the clusters, for the business in general. But we're on this way, and of course, clusters can definitely, and I think and believe that they play part. I hear from the panelists that, of course, the level of interaction, as in many areas, could be bigger. You know, of course, we have some forums and platforms where we use the voice of the business organizations, of the associations, the same cluster association. Yeah, I can hear and I can understand that it's not all the time that we are able to hear, you know, what are the needs, and of course, even more significantly, to help to solve those needs. And if I would like to get back to the cluster policy in general. So yes, we have the guidelines for the cluster development, you know, but also, you know, every cluster, like every individual business entity, they have different needs, you know. So when we say that clusters, they need assistance, let's say like this, so the form of the assistance, like as we already heard, you know, it's quite different. You know, it's the financial support, it's the help for the from the government, you know, to solve, I don't know, some regulation issues, you know, to help to improve regulatory framework, to help to establish new connections, to look for new supplies, you know, especially in these times. So there are like different needs even within the cluster community. So it depends, of course, on the maturity of a cluster, of the sector of the cluster, and we try, you know, to help to solve those challenges, which are mostly that the majority of clusters are facing, you know, at the moment. So also the switch from our policy development, I would say that 10 years ago, as I mentioned in my earlier presentation in the morning session, that a lot of clusters were established, you know, in Lithuania because a lot of different financial, especially instruments, were in place. Now, of course, we have more limited resources in this area, so we still plan to have some financial instruments in the near future, with the help of course, partly of the European Commission, you know, with the structural support. We're also thinking how to use our national resources, our national budget. We have just created a new player in the innovation ecosystem, innovation agency, so which will take over the activities that have been carried out by the Agency for Science and Innovation and Technology. And also we believe that with the bigger emphasis, not only from our ministry, but from the other ministries, from the government in general, we will be able to secure more resources, and we will be able then to meet more needs from the cluster community. So this I can tell quite clearly.
Thank you very much. And let me now, I kept you at the end because you, as it's written here, Lithuania Clusters Network President, Giedrius, let me reverse this. It's not what government can do for clusters, but what clusters can do for government. Can you refer to this?
Maybe.
I mean,
I don't know. Yeah, works. I think we need to discuss about our long-term priorities. We have confirmed our goals and plan for 7 years till 2027 to 2030. We have long-term plan. We have Lithuania has a long-term national development plan. We have KPIs. We have what we have to achieve. Now we are a team here, we need to meet to discuss and to confirm plan how we will achieve these priorities, how we can use our experience, our network, what we need resources, private, maybe governmental, European financing, and we need to have a long-term plan how to achieve and how to help country to achieve this Green Deal challenges and we need to have clear plan. What we have? We have group created cluster expert group together with ministry. We need to meet. We have motivation from clusters, but we need to have motivation from our policymakers to meet, as we met here. We didn't meet 1.5 years, but tried to do it a lot. Next, we need to agree and to work together. And a good example is European Cluster Alliance, how Alliance works with European Commission. Helps in each challenge, in each issue, try to do the best. We are ready to do the best. We are ready to work. And we are networks, we represent sectors and communities. And as example, yesterday, about 4 o'clock, I received a lot of calls from ministry because it was changes in some program. Why I received calls? Because somebody in ministry know what I'm responsible for this event. The same in clusters. If we have question, if there are some questions, ministry calls for us, cluster managers. Companies calls also for us. We are like center and network, and we are useful we could be a team to manage this task. And we don't ask support, ask salaries. Please give us money in cash each month. Our idea is cooperation and work together. And this expectation is from us, from our companies. We need to work as team, to be as team, and cooperate with other countries. And we see differences in some countries where policymakers, universities, business organizations works as team. We need to do these steps as in simple business. It is priority, it is KPIs, budget, resources, responsibility for that. Of course, we need to discuss what we planned, what we achieved. Simple way, but we need to start to discuss and first step.
Let me recall the words of our commissioner today. We must be united, and that's why I think your panel shows that you are on the same boat in Lithuania, but we are all on the same boat in the EU. If any one of us is doing in collaboration spirit for win-win, it can only help. I would ask if there's any question from the audience, because I would like to, if you have looked at input paper, we prepared input paper for this event on Lithuania, and we have given 3 examples. One is Berlin-Brandenburg. What they are doing, what they did is they prepared the kind of master plan. So policymakers prepared the master plan together with clusters in each priority area with action plans for the time, what needs to be done, and expecting from the clusters to implement. Something like you are saying about KPIs, so concrete things to be done with supporting measures from them. Another example is from the Slovenia. They had the strategic research and innovation priorities, where they agreed with clusters to lead this. So exactly again. Lombardy, they have biannual work programs for each areas, working very much with clusters, and actually clusters, because they have very rich and long-term already cluster policy, they are designing the measures. They're not only responding, but they are designing the measures. They are given sort of outsourced for, on circular economy. It's the clusters who are making the policy and then implementing. So there are good examples how, if concretized in work programs, in master plans, with concrete actors, with concrete measures, with concrete KPIs, as you are saying, which you can have a structured collaboration, structured dialogue between policymakers and clusters. Talking about clusters, I think businesses which are represented by clusters, so that if you have the funding opportunity, you don't fund each single SMEs, but a group of SMEs which are having the common goal. So we have these examples. We are always talking, look at the Basque country, Catalonia, now in Denmark, there are super clusters being developed. So there's lots of happening. In Slovakia, I mean, Daniel, this look for new business models. And here I want to refer, indeed, we have the clusters in the EU who are 100% independent from public funding. They are just financed from the fees of the members. But we have as well clusters who expect public funding only. And you can imagine that it's not our goal to pump cluster organizations, but our goal is just to give something in order to leverage their activities. And otherwise, it's simply loss of public money. And we will be criticized as the European Commission of lack of economic approach. So we don't want to find, and we had this in 2007-13, I must tell you, experience that we were developing across Europe cluster policy by financing secretariats of clusters. It didn't work, because once we finished funding, they disappeared. So it wasn't the right cluster policy just by funding. But now, and we changed the way, we want to finance activities of clusters so that they help implementing public policy objectives. So we have still 3 minutes to go. I just ask if the panelists would like to add something to what we heard here. If not, then I would like to thank you very much. It's exactly 7 o'clock p.m. and I would like that we all applause. And Theodora, I will give you, no, it's for Christina to give the floor, but I would like to thank you very much, you as Lithuania cluster policy representative, being SME, being cluster managers, being the agency, and the ministry who is responsible for all of this, for hosting this event. And I think this could be as well some boost and kickoff for further development of cluster policy for well-being of Lithuania.